We're coming to the end of this knit along. Let's jump to it.
Show me love, show me love.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Color Kaleidoscope Poncho Knit Along. This is video 4 of 4 and you are nearly done with your poncho. Hopefully you love all of this beautiful color work you've been doing. You've been weaving in your ends as you go and you're very excited to move on to the next step. By this point in your project, you have a piece that looks something similar to this. This is what the sample looks like. You've come all the way down to this portion, right? We've worked all of these charts and now we're on the final 2 charts. And these 2 charts are not any more difficult than the charts you've been doing. However, there are a lot more rounds and there's a lot of color changes going on. And so it will take you more time, but in the end, it's completely worth it. So what I want you to do is go ahead and grab this pattern. The link is in the video description box, just like before. While you're down there, smash that like button, grab your materials, join me back here. We will talk about the charts, talk about how you can make this poncho longer if you wish, and talk about binding off in pattern. All right, let's jump in.
Show me love.
Looking at this poncho, partially completed for you, but completed for me, is just a very exciting experience. I love looking at these final 2 charts that we're going to do because the thing you will notice is that I used every single color in these final 2 charts. And that was by design, obviously. I wanted to make sure that the final 2 charts of the poncho really melded well with the charts that we started off with. I didn't want it to look like an eyesore coming out at the bottom of the poncho, right? I wanted it all to really mold and tie together. I also wanted to do something that was more than just plain stockinette stitch. I've seen a lot of ponchos or swanchos where there are just plain stockinette with no color work done on the bottom of the poncho, which looks nice, but it can be very boring to knit. I'm actually doing something like that right now. I'm getting through it. It looks great, but for this poncho, I wanted something a little bit more dramatic. So for the final portion of this poncho, I chose the triangles that really mold and just kind of just reflect right into each other. Like, I just love the way this looks. Not only that, using this chart at the end here is strategically placed because it's easy to add length to the poncho without much trouble, but we'll get into that in a minute. So let's go ahead. Let's take a look at chart number 7 and number 8. And I want to point out a couple of key points that I don't want you to miss. All right. And here is chart number 7. I absolutely love this chart. I have just about every single color in this chart, and I love the way they work together. The big takeaway from this particular chart is that it's 22 stitches wide. So as you're using your stitch markers, make sure you're using those stitch markers, guys. Just trust me on this. You'll have 22 stitches between them after you've worked your increases from the last homework. And then obviously you have all of these color changes. But the big thing here is that you have a section here where there isn't a whole lot of color change, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches that this color will have to float behind and until it's used again. So here's what I want you to do. When you get your chart, you guys, go ahead and grab yourself a pen, and I want you to put a dot in these 2 places. I want you to put a dot on the stitch number 10 right there. And I want you to put a dot on stitch number 13 right there. Okay, can you see that? And then up here, I want you to put a dot on stitch number 11. And I want you to put a dot on stitch number 12. Okay, here's what we're doing. Those dots are representing where I want you to do your tuck or your weave of your float. So when you do tucks or weaves of floats, you do not want to do them one on top of the other. Otherwise, they will show through on the front side of your work. You want to make sure they're staggered apart. So by putting those dots on our chart, we have given ourselves a quick clue of, oh, that's where we're going to make sure that we weave in our floats and they aren't going to be stacked on each other. Now, don't forget these stitches here, these 3 and these 3 are also part of the 6 stitches. That's how that is going to work up. So those are the big takeaways when it comes to chart number 7. Let's go ahead and take a peek at chart number 8. All right, so looking at chart number 8, you can see here there is a lot of color work, right? Lots and lots of color work. I love this. I love this so very much. It just makes me very happy. So what you want to do here is when you're working across these triangles, obviously you have 2 rows stacked on top of each other where it's like you're doing 2 rows of the same stitch pattern. And you want to be very, very, very careful that your floats do not accidentally bunch up. If they do, this final portion of your poncho is just not going to look right. So let's take a look at the inside of mine. And what I mean here, this is float porn, everybody. This is your caution for the float porn. You can see here, let me grab my little pointer, that all of my floats, as they go across the triangle, they are all nice and uniform. And I was very, very aware as I was knitting this that I wanted to make sure all of these were exactly the same. So it will take some time to make these, which it's a very easy pattern. It's just that with those longer floats and then one stacked on top of the other, it's very easy to make them crunch up. So you want to make sure you do not do that. You'll notice that I put colors together that worked really well as they were all like touching each other. And for the most part, the colors you're choosing are all going to work well together, in theory. But like I wanted to make sure I didn't have my sprout color next to my cream color. I wanted to make sure those are separated. But I love the way the cream looks next to the brown mustard. So I made sure that those were together. Okay. The other thing I want you to make note of is that it's very easy to add length to this section. We do not need any extra stitches once you get to this point of the poncho, but it could be that you want some extra length, and that is easy to add. So you can see here that the final 6 rows here on the chart are a duplicate of rows 7 through 12, right? 7 through 12. So if we went back and we started with 1 through 6, we could add rows 1 through 6 down here, and that would add this much length. Or you could add an entire new section of 1 through 12 and add that much length. Or you can add another 24 rounds if you want to add that much length. It's completely up to you if that's something you're interested in doing to add more length to your poncho. Now, I will tell you that will require more yarn. So it could be that you run out of yarn. I don't know. I did not do the math for that, but it's just something to be aware of. And don't forget that on the final bit of your poncho, you're adding some 1x1 ribbing that will tie in to the ribbing that you did up at the top of the collar. So you want to make sure that you are planning for that extra ribbing, okay? Pretty easy stuff. Now, I know you know how to do ribbing, so I'm not going to waste your time to show you how to do ribbing again because we already did that in video number 1. However, I do want you to be aware that we will be binding off in pattern for this poncho to make sure our ribbing ends really nicely. So what I'm going to do now is just grab a little swatch and show you how to bind off in pattern.
Show me up, show me love.
When a pattern calls for you to bind off in pattern, it really means it wants you to knit along your row or round the same way you normally would. However, you will bind off your stitches by having the first stitch you knit jump up and over the second stitch. Let me show you how. I have a basic 1x1 ribbing swatch here, and what I'm going to do is change colors so you can easily see the stitches I'm doing, and I will work in patterns. So I'm going to work in my ribbing pattern. So I will purl 1 and then knit 1. And just like any regular bind off, once you get 2 stitches on your right hand needle, you want the first stitch you worked to jump up and over the second stitch. So I have my yarn to the back, grab that front or the back stitch and have it leapfrog up and over that front stitch. Can you see that? Now I have 1 stitch on the needle. Do not pull your yarn tight. Keep this stitch the same circumference as your needle. Go ahead and work the next stitch, which happens to be a purl. So I'll bring my yarn forward and I will purl that stitch. Bring my yarn back to the back, have the back stitch jump up and over the front stitch and off. The next stitch is a knit, so I knit it. My yarn is in back, have the back stitch jump up and over the front stitch. My next stitch is a purl, so I will purl it. Have the back stitch jump up and over the front stitch. You see how this is working up? So I am working in pattern in my work, and then I'm binding off the stitches as I go. As long as I do not give any extra tension right here after I work my bind off stitches will be the same tension, the same gauge as the actual stitches of the work. And it will lay really nice and beautifully on my project. I won't have any sort of a puckering or a flare out. Just remember, every time you bind off a stitch, move the yarn back to the back so it's out of the way. Bind off your stitch, and then just follow your pattern all the way down your row or around your work. Okay, I'm going to get down here to the very end so you can see how this looks. I knit the last stitch. That jumps over on this last stitch. All we're going to do now, I can grab my scissors. Here's a pro tip. Put a pom-pom on your scissors and you'll never lose them. Get to the end, pull that, give it a little tug. You can weave this close to tighten that up a little bit. There are other little tricks you can do, but you can see here my ribbing at the very end. See how it's not flared out? It looks really nice. It looks really great. It's going to lay nice and even on my work. And that is how you will bind off in pattern. So once you have completed your chart number 8, you jump into 1x1 ribbing, and at the very end, bind off in pattern, making sure it's not too tight, and then fasten off.
Show me up, show me love.
The last thing you have to do is, if you have not woven in those ends, which I really hope all of you have been doing that, once all the tails are woven in, the last thing for you to do is wash and block your poncho, and then you can wear it out. Alas, that brings the Color Kaleidoscope Poncho knit along to an end. I have had a wonderful time walking you through my design, showing you how to do beautiful stranded color work, and then giving you as many tips and tricks I have along the way. Seeing your progress pictures, you guys, has been very exciting and rewarding for me. So I want to say thank you so much for sharing with me, for joining with me on this journey. And I really hope that we can continue to grow and work together on future knitting projects. Thank you so much to Yarnspirations for sponsoring this knit along. You have been amazing, and I can't wait to do more knit alongs with you. All right, guys, don't forget to share your pictures with me on social media, and I will be sure to smash your like button. That's it for me, your By Crafty bestie. Bye.
Show me up, show me love.